My name is Rick Rungaitis. I'm the CEO of the San Marcos Chamber, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar. We continue to work with Cal State San Marcos and College of Business. They're just wonderful partners of the Chamber. They've got so many resources for the Chamber and for our Chamber members. So Sam's gracious enough to spend some time and share his time and knowledge with us today. You know, this is the beginning. We've been in regular meetings with Sam and Miguel with the College of Business, and just looking for more opportunities to partner. So you know, we're looking to do more of these. We have the ability now too. One of the good things about doing these Zoom meetings now is being able to record them and be able to put them on our website. So if you know anybody that wanted to get on today and missed it, just make sure that they know that it'll be on our website probably by tomorrow. So I want to introduce Sam, and unfortunately I have to use my glasses. So Dr. Sam Clarke is Assistant Professor of Entrepreneurship at the CSUSM College of Business Administration, and also the Director of the CSUSM Innovation Hub. Prior to joining CSUSM, Dr. Clarke was involved in the founding of several startups in the areas of software, finance, and healthcare. During the call today, he's going to talk, the theme is business model innovation. And I think everybody's had to make that strong pivot with regards to their business. And the one thing I know I've seen is that everybody's business is unique. Everybody's been affected by this pandemic, but everything is, everybody's situation is very unique. So without further ado, I'll throw it to you, Sam. Sam, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm glad that I can come and share a few thoughts with you. I'll share a couple of ideas and things to think about. I hope by the end of this that we can kind of put some of or that you can take your business and put it a little bit under a microscope and use some frameworks and some tools that I'm going to talk about briefly to analyze what you're doing as a business, and hopefully find ways in which you can either pivot if you need to pivot, or you can plan on growth and acceleration and those types of things if things are working well. But we'd like to look at the business model and analyze it and see where there are opportunities for change and growth. So that's kind of the goal. We'll be talking a little bit about some of these frameworks and mindsets as we go through today. So I just wanted to start off and share the reason why I put in the topic, kind of an entrepreneur's look at business model innovation, when we're talking about this with Rick, is because as an entrepreneur, we have something that's a little bit different. It's not necessarily different, but we focus on it a little bit more. And that is that a startup, the mindset that we take is that we work in conditions of uncertainty. And that's a really important part of entrepreneurship, and really what we're in right now. Everything is being tossed and turned and upside down, and we're in unprecedented times, and things are changing quite rapidly, and seems like every day things are changing. And it's not just a pandemic. Like, this is accelerating even when we weren't in a pandemic. Things like technology that changes quite rapidly, et cetera, makes for really uncertain times in the business. And this is where startups excel and entrepreneurs try to excel, is in these conditions of uncertainty. And so what we want to do today is hopefully show you some tools and frameworks to help you overcome that uncertainty, and to realize how you can make your business model stronger. It's nothing, uncertainty, it's not something to fear as a business, because there are a lot of opportunities that come from uncertainty. That's why we have so many startups in our country, and that's why it contributes to so much of our economic growth, is because uncertainty is not something we fear, but something we look as a positive. And so that's what we're gonna spend a couple minutes talking about. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is somewhat of that entrepreneurial mindset. What do we go through as an entrepreneur when we are in these uncertain times and conditions? And I present the framework always in a way that's hopefully easy for people to understand. And if you look at the small picture here, I know it's small. I put the idea of entrepreneurship into a Venn diagram. And there's three components that are essential to a startup. And it's essential to any business, really. What we look at first is problems that exist in the marketplace. And what we know right now is the needs of our customers are changing, right? The needs are changing because of the pandemic. The needs are changing because of new regulations. There's all different kinds of reasons why there's new problems that exist. Now, when you're looking at your business, you may not be focusing on new problems that are emerging, but on the existing needs of your customers, and to understand how those things change over the course of the last few months is important for you to analyze and take a closer look at and say, how, are the customers' needs still the same as they were before? Do they have the same type of, do they value the same types of things that they did in the past? Once we understand our customer problems, and we do this a lot through a process called customer discovery. I'm not going to talk a lot about that, but the next thing is we have a solution that's tied to that problem. And the solution is usually a product or service that you guys offer is the solution to their problem. You're trying to solve other people's problems. That's what a business does. And everything we buy is, in most part, to fulfill a need that we have. And so we go and we look for the specific products and services that fulfill those needs. The relationship to the problem and solution is what gives value to our customers. So when we look at and we talk about value propositions and we talk about why somebody buys our product, it's because they receive value from that. And that relationship, if it works well, if we have strong value between our solution and our problem, we call that product market fit, right? Our product and our market, they fit well together. And we do an analysis and we can understand whether or not that's true. But what makes us entrepreneurial is not the relationship purely between problem and solution, right? Not everybody who comes up with and solves problems is an entrepreneur or is a business person. There's all types of people on campus who are researchers and scientists, and they come up with solutions all the time for problems. But what makes us really entrepreneurial is when we attach a business model to it. So that's really the kind of key difference between what we're doing and what other people are doing is we're attaching this business model. And what we talk about in the startup world is that the search for the business model is kind of that entire entrepreneurial process. So a lot of times we have kind of an idea, like as entrepreneurs, we talk about ideas, we talk about the products that we want to offer. Now we're in search of how do we develop that business model. So that's just a mindset I want you guys to think of. And I'm going to refer back to those 3 circle framework a few times today, but I just wanted to give that to you as a starting point. Well, in order for us to better understand business model innovation, better talk about the business model part of it, right? There's the components. And most people that I talk to, when we think about business, there's really only 2 important things. I guess if we dumb it down to the 2 most critical things of business model, somebody's got to build your solution, somebody's got to sell your solution, right? There's those 2 parts to it. So the business model fundamentally just outlines how we create value for our customers and how we sell value to our customers. And if you guys ever want to look up, there's all different kinds of things. There's these business model canvases that exist. And I drew up one kind of, this is what they look like. You can search these and grab these, and it's a way to evaluate your business. But basically, if you look at the center of it, there's value propositions. Again, the whole point of a business is to create value for your customers, to have that product match the customer needs and to do that. And we exchange that value for money. And if you think of money is just a store of value, and we're exchanging that with our customers. So value propositions is in the center of our business model. That's what we're trying to do. On the left side of your business model is all about creating value propositions. So we do things, those are our key activities. We do things that are important for creating value propositions. We own things that are important, or we have resources that are important for our value propositions. If we don't do them and we don't own resources, but is necessary for our value propositions, then we outsource it. And that's what we think of as key partners. So that left side is all about building those value propositions. We summarize those as business people as costs. right? Everything that we do and buy and outsource and partner, those end up being costs for our business. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. On the right side is all about delivering to our customers, right? How do we actually get these value propositions to our customers? Well, we put them into products, then we sell them on Amazon, or we have a retail store, or we visit our customers. There's all different kinds of models and channels and relationships that we develop to deliver specific value propositions to our customers. And all of those contribute to revenue. As entrepreneurs, in the past, we talked a lot about business planning. We don't do a lot of business planning anymore. We mostly do business modeling, because it allows us, and this is what I suggest for you guys to do too, is to take a business model canvas like what we have shown up here and just search that on the internet. You pull up and start really diving into those different categories and doing what I would say is like looking at the golden thread and writing out what is our business model, what is the process that we go through as a business to create value propositions and deliver those value propositions to our customers. And this gets really interesting. One of the examples I always like to share is that when you're thinking of your business and the strategy you want to employ to be successful, I'll come back just briefly and come back here. I'm going to go back to our framework with the 3 circles here. You as a business need to be innovative in one of those 3 categories at minimum. You need to have an innovative problem. So you need to have a niche marketplace. Maybe that's a possibility. That helps you be successful. Or you need to have an innovative product that could be successful, or an innovative business model. You have to have at least one. If you have more than one, you're probably becoming more wildly successful. Businesses that are both innovative in their product and their business model, and potentially in their marketplace, are going to be some of the most successful companies we see around. For example, Uber is an example of a company that's very innovative in their product, right? They provide transportation. That's like a summary of what they do. But their product is peer-to-peer transportation. That's the innovation in their product. Their business model uses app technology to deliver that customer. So there's this innovation across the solution and the business model. But not every company is going to be innovative in all the categories. But you need to figure out how to be innovative in one, at least one. And when you think of a lot of businesses, they're likely selling to a similar marketplace. Just think of your competitors, right? And what you guys do. You have probably, you compete with people who are not only selling to the same customers, but you might be doing things that are very, very similar. So I don't know, like I'm trying to think very quickly. I'll use the example Walmart, right? When you go to Walmart, the products aren't significantly different than going to Target. And I know there's some differences there, people make the argument, but they're selling basically the same thing, especially when you get in the food section, right? The box of cereal that they sell at Target is like the same box of cereal that they sell at Walmart. And the TV they sell at Walmart is the same TV they sell at Target. And so in that situation, the innovation has to be successfully implemented on the business model, because they're attacking the same market problem with the same solution. The only way you can be successful as a business is to look at the business model in that case, right? So what does Walmart and Target do differently? Well, Walmart wanted to be innovative on the left side of the business canvas. So if we look at the business model canvas and we look at what they're doing, their whole focus, if you're familiar with Walmart's strategy, is what they call a low-cost strategy, low-cost leader, right? So on the left side of the business model canvas, they're focusing on how do we create value for our customer? How do we get the value to our customers at the lowest possible cost? And just to be clear on what we mean by cost is not price. Price is what you charge the customer. They're not the low price leader. The customers don't get it for a lower price. They might pass along some price savings, but what they're really attacking is low cost. The cost that it takes to acquire that box of cereal is less expensive than, say, Target acquiring that box of cereal. And because they can acquire it for far less money, when they sell it for the same price, they make a greater margin and they're more successful. They become more successful. And we see that how Walmart has spent a lot of time innovating on that low cost side, right? They invested a lot in innovation in their logistics to bring down the cost of providing those products to their customers. And so that's the difference. Now, what is Target's current strategy? What are they doing that's trying? They're not necessarily considered a low cost leader. They're not investing in a lot of innovative strategies in reducing logistics and things like that. I know they've spent some money, but they're never going to probably outcompete Walmart. So what is Target's new strategy as they pivot right now? And they're trying to do things that to make themselves innovative. Well, if we again look at the business model canvas, they're focusing on the other side, the channels and the customer relations and distribution. So what have you seen at Target's? Is they're going through and renovating all of their stores to provide some additional value proposition to customers that focuses on the experience of shopping at Target. And what they hope is that experience, they might be able to charge a slight premium, and people who are interested in going to Target are going to pay a little bit more than if they went to Walmart, but the experience is better. We always get those jokes, right? I was watching some TikTok and it's like, somebody went to Walmart and they didn't have what they wanted. So they had to change their clothes to go to Target, right? Because the whole point is they're providing a different experience. They're focusing on a different side. And those are like contrasting things of where they're focusing on being innovative as a company. So when we look at the business model innovation, we're looking, you can narrow down, you can be innovative in multiple areas. Amazon is an example of being innovative on both sides. Again, it made them so they could be a much more successful, but even being innovative in just key parts of your business model will help you, overcome some of the challenges and make some differences. So that's just an example. A couple examples that I can share. There's other things to think about, and one of the things that I've pointed out with the business model to a lot of people is there are differences between customers and users. Okay. And if you're doing maybe a tech type company, you might have users, you might have customers. Not everybody's going to fall into this category, but I just wanted to share it because it's oftentimes get people confused. The question that I always ask, are you if you're a Facebook, if you have a Facebook account, are you a customer of Facebook? And the obvious answer that you really think about it is the answer is no. You don't buy anything from Facebook. You don't contribute to the revenue portion of their business model, right? You actually are a user of the Facebook platform and you contribute to the cost. Well, if you're a cost of Facebook, because posting your pictures and having an account has a cost to it. Now, Facebook does that at fractions of a penny, but you become actually what's a key partner in your business, in Facebook's business. So it's important to kind of think about that is that if you have users are actually partners, not customers. And how you think about that is important. I was talking to somebody the other day, we were talking about bank, right? Every one of you might have a checking and savings account at a bank. Are you customers of that bank if you have a checking account and a savings account? Well, technically the answer is no. You're not a customer of the bank, you're a partner of the bank. The bank is paying you to participate, just like they pay a lawyer or they pay an accountant. They are paying you to get access to resources you have in the term of deposits, right? So you're not a customer. Who are the customers of banks? Well, they're the people who get car loans. They're the people who take on mortgages. Those are the people who contribute to the revenue of the company, whereas those holding checking accounts. And so when we were talking, we're doing some consulting for this bank. It was like, when we look at what they're doing as a bank, as a strategy, and in that case, they were wanting to build more buildings, right? And the interesting thing is, okay, why are you building buildings? And they think they were analyzing people who want to come in and deposit money in their checking and savings account. We need more buildings and the question is, are buildings the best way to attract users of the bank? Right? Users are people who are paying. Do buildings, branches, attract more car loans and mortgages? because that's where your revenue comes from. You want to make sure those build. And it was when this thing is like, once you start thinking about users and customers differently, your strategies might change. So if in case you're in one of those situations, keep that in mind, that how we evaluate users and customers will change the way in which we strategize about our business innovation. Okay. I'll share another two examples about thinking about business model innovation. And this does come from a little bit more of that banking world and thinking about users, thinking about customers. When you think about a bank, and especially a traditional bank, right? Their customer segments are virtually the same. You know, they're competing over the same customers. Oops, I didn't want to put that one up. I want to do my framework. They're competing over the same customers. The product is virtually the same, right? It's a banking account, savings account, card. You know, that's for the users. But the more car loans, mortgages, they're kind of the same product. So again, how does a bank be successful? If you're starting a new bank, where are you going to compete? Well, you're not going to be doing a different product necessarily. That's not going to. So what did they do? They start competing in the business model. And you see some of the largest banks and largest financial institutions, and these ones that are rapidly growing, doing different things in the business model, part of the framework. One of the good examples is the company Allied Bank. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. There's lots of people copying this model, but Allied Bank is a completely online bank. They have no branches anywhere in the United States. And so what they looked at and said, the users, we want users that aren't necessarily interested in having a branch to deposit their money. Instead, we're just going to pay them more, give them a higher interest rate. We think we'd be able to attract users through that process. And that's what they do. So they pay quite a bit more in interest for users. And then they go out and they can sell products. And that ends up being, for them, a better strategy, probably a low cost, right? Because buildings and staffing those buildings is really expensive. And so they cut out all of that excess cost and gave a little bit more interest to the depositors. And then they can go out and have competitive loans. Whether they give a better price, I don't necessarily think they have to, because what they're doing is making bigger margins. Another example of this, like in the finance world, if you guys are familiar with the app Robinhood, right? Robinhood is an app that lets people, it's a brokerage account, right? You can buy and sell stocks. Well, again, people have needs for brokerage accounts to invest their money. Not much, a solution is selling our brokerage accounts. There's not anything different the way in which they do it. It's so highly regulated. You can't necessarily do a new version of it. And so they focused on the business model, and what they did the entire trading platform in an app. And that business model allowed them to cut costs. They passed those savings on to users in the form of no commissions, and they really disrupted that industry. So going back a little bit to the business model, what, again, I suggest you do is kind of start going through and you look at the things you're doing and ways in which you can be successful, is either looking at how we can cut costs, and this is pretty high, not detailed, but just kind of be critical of your business and think about it, or think of strategic ways in which we can change the way we attract customers. And the Target, Walmart, those are things that are important. Those are important strategic tools. And I don't know the name of this company. I'll give one more example of, I'm sure some people are familiar on this call. I was doing some work and helping some companies in the brewing industry. And it's kind of interesting because when you look at the brewing industry, they have it's very, very competitive, right? Again, when we talk about the market segment, it's a fixed market. I mean, it's grow. It might be growing. It might even actually be shrinking at this point in time, the amount of people who would like to try like locally craft beers. And then the solutions they're providing, right? The solution is beer. And when I know that every brewery provides different flavors and things like that to their beer. A few different styles, they might have the IPA or whatever it might be. But what we, in the strategy world, what we think of those are what we call incremental innovations or incremental improvements. They're not, really, truly super innovative. And so they have the same group of customers. The products are only incrementally improving, and they all operate on the same business model, right? They have a tap room. What happens when you align, when you're doing the same problem, the same solution, and the same business model? Well, the only way you can compete as a business is on price. And so what has happened is the price has been driven down, cutting into margins. Not only that, maybe we've hit kind of a point in which the price can't go any further. And so we see a lot of turnover in the brewery industry where the margins just aren't very big. Well, what did one company do? And this is slightly different. They're not the exact brewery, but I know the company local, I think they're in Encinitas or somewhere in that direction, where instead of offering a tap room where they traditionally just sell their pints of beer, they do a kind of like a tasting where you pay per ounce, right? Now, I don't know if that will be super successful in the long run, but it's a different business model. It's a different way to approach it. If the value proposition that they're trying to sell is people like to try all these different beers, well, a traditional model makes them buy a pint. We just make them buy per ounce. They can try it. If they like it, they can buy more. If they don't like it, they can try another one. And it allows for a completely different value proposition to be presented to customers. And that value proposition, it seems like, from what I understand, has resonated with people. People want to go and try it out and see what they like. And likely they probably charge a slight premium on doing that because the value proposition is different. So, all right. I want to show one last slide and then I'll pause for some questions. This is just a simple thing to think about. Again, I talked about making like the golden thread to evaluate your business model, to go through and look at it from start to finish. What does a customer do? And I use this little line, and I know this is simplified, but just imagine on that left side, a customer comes up and bumps up against your business, right? Everything that you do before they bump up against the business is what we call marketing, right? You're out, you're marketing. And once they discover your business, they come up and bump up against your business. And then you take that customer through a process that, there's a sales process involved in this. There's distribution of products. They go through the business model from left to right, in a sense. I know, again, simplified, but they go through this business model. And at the end, once they've completed this whole process, at the end, they got value from you and they give you money in exchange for that. So when we evaluate our business model, what we do is we imagine our customer going through that process and making sure that they achieve the value at the end so they can exchange money. And then we look for problems in the business model. These might be, most likely they're going to be inefficiencies, right? And that's okay. In the startup world, we have all kinds of inefficiencies because we don't have a lot of resources or time. And you guys might be in the same scenario as small business owners, right? You don't have enough time to get everything in, but there are inefficiencies in your business model. I draw that little square in the middle of the business model because as you go through and identify it, you realize, hey, this piece costs a lot of money, or it takes a lot of time, and it slows down our customers through the process of exchanging money for value. And as we identify this, and I usually share this slide when we talk about raising money, because what you want to do is find those, figure out how much it costs to fix them, and then you would go out and you would raise the proper amount of money to fix those. So maybe you realize that as customers move through our process, something is very inefficient, and there's a technology that exists that makes that a little bit better, that makes it faster. It makes it so we can convert more customers, or they can get access to their value faster, or they realize the value of, things like consumer surplus and things like that. So we would identify things that could assist. And when I work with businesses, that's mostly what we do, is we go through and we make this golden thread, and we look at where are the inefficiencies in their business model, from creating the value through delivering it to the customers, and then we are able to incorporate new technologies, which is often the case, and or other processes or more efficient processes in that. Once you have ironed out your inefficiencies and your business model is flowing and it's very effective, then we talk about growth and scale, right? Because all you're doing at that point is you're taking a business model and repeating it over and over and over again. And again, this is a point where going out and raising money makes sense because your business model works. There's a return on investment you can calculate. You've moved from uncertainty to predictability, which is what startups are trying to do. We talked about they work in conditions of uncertainty, but the goal is to move them from uncertainty to certainty and to make it more predictable in their model. Once they have predictability, things move slowly, are much quicker, not slowly, but much quicker, and investments and scale and those types of things become possible for your business. But until you innovate on those, it becomes very challenging to grow and scale. And I know that's an important part of a lot of people's business strategies, how to get this to grow. Okay. I talked for a long time. I think I talked for 25 minutes. So I will pause and answer some questions. And then I have maybe one last thing to share before we jump off. How long are we on this, Rick? I don't want to take everybody's time.
To an hour.
Okay. So we can pause, see if there are any questions. I know there are a couple questions that popped up in the chat box. I didn't know if there are questions, but let's take a look at some of them.
So does anybody have questions for Sam? A lot of great information, Sam. It's the one thing I find interesting too is like the example. Of course, I go back to the beer, but at the example of the craft breweries and just selling beer by the ounce, and as you're competing for your customers. But it's interesting because it seems like every business has had to do some type of pivot to work under the new health and safety guidelines. And I've kind of gotten out the last couple weeks more, and mainly to restaurants and the breweries, and it's really interesting. Everybody's doing it a little different, but they're all trying to make it work, and it's just such a challenge because it's all they're all doing it at smaller capacity, of course. In some respects they're trying to recover 20, 25, 30% of their business. So
yeah, and there's some interesting things that occur, and the breweries are especially I would say, and restaurants are the same way. There hasn't been a lot of forced innovation in those industries. And it's partly, like we talked about the brewery industry, it's partly because a lot of people who do brewing beer do it as a passion, right? They're okay with the lower margins. I mean, they're probably not okay with it, but they live with it because they're passionate about what they do. It's something they're really interested in. I think now that we've gone through this pandemic, it will be interesting to see, because I think they are being forced to be innovative. When we look again, if they're selling to the same market with basically virtually the same thing, and when we talk about beer, for example, those flavor differences, those are incremental only. They don't provide a significant innovation. I mean, when we talk about innovation in the beer, it's going from it's coming up with a new style, like going from a lager to an IPA. Whoever invented that was the truly innovative person. When we take an IPA and we add flavors to it, those are incremental, and that's not bad, but incremental can only take you so far in terms of increasing price, right? You can't necessarily argue that our flavors are so much better that we can charge twice the price as everybody else. And that's what we try to do with innovation a lot of time is we're trying to increase value in product innovation so that we can charge more, right? If you have a better product, the price should be higher, but with incremental improvement. So it's like now we really, as a brewery industry, we have to focus on business model innovation. How can we create our product at a cost? How can we distribute at a lower cost, right? And what we've seen, because I have some companies worked with some companies in the space, is is you see some of these companies making transition. One of the big forced innovations, I would say, and what companies will be interesting to see what happens afterward, is that they've gone direct to consumers. Whereas before they relied primarily on their tap rooms to generate, because that was high revenue potential. They had greater profit margins there. When they closed all the tap rooms, now we have to go direct to consumer. And so they had put a lot, imagine that you're pivoting, you're changing your entire business model in terms of the right side of the business model about distribution. You used to distribute to restaurants and your tap room. Now we're going direct to consumer. What does it take on the left side of your business model in order to do that? Well, you're going to have to change a few things up. And I think a lot of breweries, there's a bunch of them that were successfully able to pivot. We had a company called Brew Catalog that came in to assist a number of companies make that transition into direct to consumer. So what will happen afterwards? I don't know. It'll be interesting if these breweries who spent this time going through this pivot will continue to go direct to consumer. We'll see. But that may play an advantage for them ongoing. And this is, I don't want to be negative about this, but in a sense, there's a transformation of the industry, because if breweries remain going direct to consumer online, what happens to the people who used to sell all that beer, right? Now the company has just cut their costs in terms of people, but maybe are doing additional revenue before. So there's this interesting catch-22. And one of the challenges that we have in terms, and I share this a little bit with a few people, is we're unfortunately at a tough time going forward in terms of unemployment, I believe, because we had so many years of economic boom, right? We had the longest cycle of economic boom in the recorded time. The last 10 years, we've just been growing rapidly. And companies ran out of people, right? They were trying to grow, but they couldn't hire any people to grow. So what is a company who's growing really fast but can't add human resources into the mix? What do they do instead? Well, they add technology, and they supplement their existing workforce, and they keep adding and adding technology. That's the only path to growth. And what I've been worried about, and I was talking to this maybe a year ago, is that if that's the case, when we hit an economic downturn, what happens? Well, the companies continue to accelerate, but they're doing it with all the technology they invested in the last couple of years, because they didn't have people. And there wasn't access. There wasn't enough people in the workforce. And so now they've invested in all these other ways in which they grow. And the companies that will be successful, I think, will continue growing, but they'll do it with less people. So from an economic standpoint, when we think of economics, what we have to do is retool a lot of these people into new and growing industries, because unemployment will likely remain high. But what we'll see, and what you probably see in the stock market, what you even saw in the last economic recession, is GDP continues to go in the same direction, but we do it with less people working. And so it will be interesting to see how the next couple of years go.
So we got a question in chat. Rob, I can take you off mute. I can unmute you if you'd like, and you can ask your question, or maybe you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Rick. Yeah, thank you. And hi, Sam. I was wondering what indicators exist to let us know if our innovations or our potential models, if we're being creative, what indicators exist to let us know that we're basically outpacing the marketplace, or the market's not ready for that particular model?
So you're talking about whether or not you have, we always call it, there's bleeding edge, there's cutting edge innovations, right?
Right.
What you really want to be, especially if you're resource constrained, is on cutting edge innovations. And that's why I think bleeding edge is important. It leads to the cutting edge eventually. It eventually becomes cutting edge. But bleeding edge, what the big difference I always see in bleeding edge innovations, cutting edge, is bleeding edge, you have to educate so much of your customers' knowledge about what the innovation is, that you spend a lot of resources and time. We had a startup that at one point in time, early in my career, that I would call bleeding edge. It was just such a revolutionary thought about how to think about, in this case, the healthcare space, that we spent almost equal time, if not more time, educating people on the innovation as we did selling, right?
Yeah.
And so I find that if you're spending a significant amount of time educating, and that's perfectly fine, being on that bleeding edge, if you're able to spend that time educated and it actually converts to sales, just make sure your model accounts for that added cost of education, right?
Right.
And that you might have to price, and of course, if it's bleeding edge and it's very innovative and you're spending time educating people, the price should be higher. It should be a better product, right? If you're educating people and you can't get the price higher, then you're probably you're probably going in the wrong direction, I would say.
I see.
Because everybody's like, well, our product is better and cheaper. Well, that doesn't make any sense. If it's better, it should be more expensive.
Right.
So those are two different strategies. It's like the difference of the Target Walmart strategy, right? If you're less expensive, you're the Walmart strategy. You're trying to make up all your revenue or your profits on the cost side, reducing cost. If you're providing a better product or whatever, you're trying to increase the price so that you make more money. Does that help answer some of your questions?
That does, because I'm trying to figure out how much energy to expend on the education side for a unique business model, because what it kind of feels like at some point is trying to convince somebody that this is the new thing, or this is where the industry is going, and that takes a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of wanted to pick your brain, and thank you. Yeah, that answered my question.
Yeah, and you end up, it sounds like you're kind of on the bleeding edge space, something just so revolutionary in which people don't think that way. And it takes a lot of time. Just always keep in mind that how to create efficiencies in that education, right? Rick and I have talked about this too a lot, and we talked a lot about this at the business school. It's like, if most likely you're going to do this when you're educating, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's not like you're educating. And so make sure that anything that can be systematized and automated is done. So you don't have to do it more than once, right? So when we were on that bleeding edge, we created so much content that when somebody had a question, we had likely already answered that question. So we would just send them, you could send them an email with a video. In that case, we didn't have videos, but we had a blog or whatever, and we just sent them the information.
Yeah,
and they could read that. And so anytime you do it, just make sure you keep all that stuff and write it in a way or produce content in a way that can be scalable. You can repeat it over and over again, and that will increase your efficiency. And that helps when you're resource constrained, right? If you had plenty of money, you would just hire enough people to go out and do all the education. It's probably, it might just be you and a few people. You don't have enough time so anyway, that's how we kind of approach things, is go through that process and just identify every time you interact with a customer, what is required for them to move to the next step, and make sure all the content is, pre-created.
Got you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for asking the question. I'm glad you're able to join us today. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Rick. Much appreciated.
I've got another question in chat room from Nancy. Nancy, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's a simple way to start looking at inefficiencies in a business. I mean, do you just have to take each process one at a time and evaluate it, or is there kind of an overarching strategy that you might be able to throw out for us?
I don't know if there's necessarily an overarching strategy. I always start at, the high level and then funnel it down to specifics, because most likely what you want to identify are the biggest problems. And those things probably bug you every day, right? It's like those things, as you go through this business model, say a customer comes up, bumps up against your business. They want to get to your product. You've been successful at marketing and they've come. What are the things that annoy you the most? That's where I would start in that process. Is there something you have to do for every customer? Okay, you do that for every customer and it's a manual process. So what I would be looking for is there a technology in that case to make that manual process more efficient? And likely there is, because people are suffering from the same problems over and over again. So there's probably a technology. If there's not, you know, you can look at either, is this something worth investing to build a technology for? Because it's critical to our business model. Is it something, and you know, going beyond that, is it something worth building, not only to use for my business model, but to sell to other people who likely have the same problem and there's not an existing solution for it? But I would just, I mean, that's always, there's going to be something that just annoys you and is painful. That's where I would start. Now, once you kind of started evaluating those, then you start being a little more nitpicky, and you could bring in all kinds of very, you know, you think of the big corporations, they have everything systematized down to, you know, it's all in a manual, right? And they, by doing that process of writing down the whole process, they're going to find what makes sense, what doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And you want to get to predictability. You want everything in a business. When you're a small business, a startup, you're a lot of uncertainty. You're doing a lot of things kind of, you know, let's say custom, right? This customer needs it. It's slightly different. And that eats up a lot of time. That's probably the biggest inefficiency. One thing we learned is to like pick what you're going to do. And you'll realize that not every customer is your customer at this point in time. Sometimes in the sales process, if we have this thing of qualifying customers, because they need to not only, you have your problem solution model, and if they don't fit perfectly in it, what we don't want you to end up doing is creating a model or a product for every different customer, because it's super inefficiency. What you just say at this point in time is that you're not our customer. And if you're getting more that, anyway, if you get a lot of people who come and sit and they're not your customer, then are you doing something wrong? Yes. Right. And so I would qualify them carefully. There was one business I was working with, and every time I talked to him, I was like, wait a minute, I didn't know you're like, that business doesn't sound like the last time you explained it. It's like, oh, it's another product. And what I realized over a period of time is that he had a different product for every customer. And to me, it's, we'll pick the most important products. Maybe it's one. That's when we talk startups, we say pick the most important product and service, and the one that has the most customer need. And if you're got beyond the first one, then you add one and two, and grow. It's this philosophy that I say is like, be the Amazon of books before you're the Amazon of everything, right? Amazon was very good at selling books. If somebody came and wanted to buy a computer on Amazon, they'd just say, you're not our customer. But they perfected the business model of selling books, and they realized that they could easily apply that to other products. And so they slowly adopted other products. And as you can see, it grew to a point where Amazon does everything, but they have the capital and resources to do it. So sometimes it's hard as a business owner to turn away customers because you spent so much time marketing, and you spend a bunch of money marketing, and then come to them, they get to you and you say, sorry, we're not the solution for you. And that's always sometimes hard for a business owner, because it's you want to get that revenue, but at what cost do you do it at? Anyway, does that help a little bit, Nan?
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm going to share something at the end, and maybe just in case people start jumping off. I know Kimmy has a question here, but I want you guys who are joining this we are doing a thing at CSUSM. It's basically people who come and apply, and there's the website. It's csusm.edu/COBA, College of Business Administration /BRRR. Kind of an interesting URL, but the idea here is you can come and apply. Here we're trying to help businesses who are in situations who may need to be innovative and pivot. So we have 4 categories that we're focusing on. Is pivoting. So if you want to look at your business model and see where there can be innovation incorporated in it, like this would be a great place for you to apply. And one of our executives or faculty reaches out to you, they schedule some time, they talk about your business, et cetera. And hopefully they give you some insights to say, here's some things that we've noticed where we would focus our effort, you should probably focus some efforts on doing. There's people. So if you have problems in the people space in your business model, or on this customer side, on the sales, there's that. There's some things about like profit management, cash flow. So you can look into that. And so go to that website and apply if you're interested in having somebody come and help you for a little while. Now, the whole point of this is just to help you look at your business and see if there's things that we can help point out and have you work on. And then if you need help or something in the fall, maybe, like a lot of startups or small businesses, you identify all kinds of things that you need to work on. You just don't have the time to do it. The university is looking like in the fall to connect with resources, things like that. So, but this over the summer, we'll look in and help you look at your business and evaluate maybe some of those inefficiencies.
Sounds like a great resource. Thanks, Sam. We do have a question from Kimmy Wall. Kimmy, I don't think you have access to a mic, so I'll read the question. What are your thoughts on partnering with a similar successful business to help promote your new business for organic advertising?
So do you work with an existing similar business there is some strategic precedence in the idea of working or building an industry, and there's risks to it, but there's strategic. So the best example I think of when I think of this type of scenario is Tesla, right? If you think of Tesla, they went out and they built these nice electric cars, but there wasn't the infrastructure that people needed to adopt the car at a high rate. So they had this like catch-22 dilemma. They wanted people to buy their cars, but as a society, we hadn't built the infrastructure. So what they do, they gave away all their patents. They let anybody use the patent. And why did they do that? Well, because if they could spur up competitors, it wasn't necessarily that, that was good for them. It was that as more and more people and more competition came into the market, a new industry is developed and the infrastructure gets built out. And so for them, it was a strategic advantage to say, we will give away certain things in order for us to create an overall industry that would support us as a Tesla, but also, it will introduce competitors. We, at that point in time, just have to outcompete them once the industry is developed. So that was something Tesla, I don't know if Tesla still lets you use their patents for free, but that was a strategy that they used early on. So if you're looking at working with another business, does it increase the total pie that is available? That's what I would focus on. If you're not increasing the pie, what you end up, you're going to end up, you just compete over that same slice. It might be difficult to work with another competitor. So, Rick, you're on mute.
God, I've been so good about doing that. I think I broke my string of about 12 Zoom meetings without doing that. So Joe DiMaggio's record safe. So we're just about out of time. I don't have any other questions in chats. So Sam, any last words? I really appreciate your time with this and your knowledge. And I tell this to Sam every time. I always feel smarter after having a meeting with Sam. So we appreciate the resources that you're providing us today.
Yeah, I would just say, we talked a lot about high level things. Every business is different. We have, as a chamber, you guys are all kind of, for the most part, you're doing different things. And so we didn't necessarily get into the details of any particular business, but I would just say, take some of those frameworks and start plugging it in, create detail the process that people go through in terms of your business model, and then start looking for those inefficiencies. And if you need help, just go apply on that CSUSM website. Rick, I don't know if you want to share that with people in the email, but we're happy to kind of get on a call and think through more specific on your business, right? Not just the high level stuff we're talking about today, but kind of talk about what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it. And hopefully say, okay, everything's aligned properly. It makes sense. It also, hopefully with some of the experience of the people, the faculty, the executives that we have at the College of Business, we have some resources that we can point you to, right? Whether that's tools like some technologies that we're familiar with that you might want to go buy, or if it's some resources that the university can provide. Those would be very more specific to your business.
Great. Thanks, Sam. And I see that Jill Lacheski's on our call too. Jill is in charge of internships at the university, and she's going to be doing a webinar same time a week from today. So check that out, information on our website for that. And Jill's going to be talking about, there's still great opportunities for internships from the university, and just how to be able to make that pivot to do them in a virtual world and still be effective not only for your business, but a great opportunity for the students. I'm a big believer in interns. My former life, when I was running minor league baseball teams, we'd have about 12 to 15, and it's just tremendous talent, and it's a great opportunity for both the students and the businesses. So again, that's the same time next week. But check it out on our website once you get registered, get all the Zoom information. So again, thanks everybody for joining us today. We want to keep doing more of these. Let us know. Send Christina's on this call as well, so send Christina or myself an email if you've got any ideas of whether it's issues or, we've kind of divided them into 3 categories: government, business / marketing, and health. So if there's any topics you want us to get somebody to be a guest speaker on, we're happy to do it. So thanks again, Sam, for sharing your time and knowledge. We value our partnership with the university, and you guys provide so many resources. I know Christina put that website on the chat box, so make sure you guys take advantage of that recovery service if you've, it sounds like a great resource that the university provides. So thanks again, Sam, and thanks again for everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. Appreciate the time today.
Already?